Well, we made it to the final video for painting Bane's skin tones. And if you saw the other videos, they were kind of long. This one is nothing different. There's a lot of steps here, and I tried to do my best to shorten it down. I could have done it in 3 steps, but I would have left out a lot of detail, and you would have been just probably in the same boat. So I'd rather show you everything here so that you don't have any questions going unanswered. Now, for film purposes, I did speed up all of the film just because it is incredibly lengthy as far as all the details that are needed to be done here. So as you can see, we are picking up where we left off. We painted the shirt, painted the pants. Well, now we are going to heat up that shirt and roll it over and pull it down over the pants. We're going to cover it up with some blue tape so we don't have any paint going into the bottom or leaking into any other crevices that we don't want to have problems with. So once again, you can see that I have already gone ahead and worked on masking out the arms. And as you can see, the hands do not come off because we did fix it. So before we even start, I want to give you a list of the paints that I used. There are no fancy names. You can use any acrylic you want. But these are the colors that I ended up using. A beige, a dark beige, a red brown, a blue, a yellow, just a regular brown, and a white to lighten anything up on the other colors. Basic colors, easy to find anywhere. You can use Citadel, you can use Testers, Model Masters, Vallejo paints, whatever you want to use. It's going to work just fine. As you can see, I used nothing more than craft paints and only one of the Testers paints. They work just fine. In the end, the result you'll see by what you are going to have in front of you. So we're going to go ahead and start off with painting Bane. Now he's already been sprayed down with the Super Clear, or the Mr. Super Clear, which is incredibly expensive and very, very strong in vapors. I'm going to be using synthetic brushes. I've got 5 different sizes, and I will be end up using all 5 different ones depending on what I'm doing. Now on the base coat, we're going to start off with a medium brush, and we are going to just cover it with a light beige. On every crevice, every area that we can get. Once again, you're going to be painting in layers. You don't want to go too thick because it's not about covering everything here to make it the final color. You just want to provide a nice base coat for the other colors to stain. Now, true, we did hit it with the Mr. Super Clear so the paint will stick, but if we just paint in details and other colors, then we're not going to be able to stain colors underneath, and that we're going to do with the red wash, the blue wash, and the yellow. And that's going to give us our different semi-realistic skin tones. So once again, take your time. There's a lot of detail on the arms. If you feel it necessary, you can definitely pull the arms off and work on them individually. I have only attached them to be able to show you everything together. Otherwise, it extends into even a longer video or more editing time. And the whole purpose of this video is to show you how I achieved the look that you saw in the beginning clip. Because in the very end, I will show you all of the other details of it already finished and ready to go. Plus, I'll have a contrast as far as the before and after segments so you can see the big change in here. Now, I understand that the Bane has a lot of issues as far as posability and the gaps and all of that. If that's an issue for you, then really this is not the video for you, because this is not dealing with that. This is all about having fun, having to paint and create something that at one time did not exist. So in this case, we're not going to focus on any of those defects. We're only going to focus on the flesh tones. So I've already covered up the majority of it, and I've already broken down each step in here with a little title to show you if you want to go back in and start off at that title. I'm still working on using these tags or these chapters. It's a little bit frustrating, but anyhow, let's move on to the next part of our project. Now, before you go into a different color, you always want to clean up the brush, and you want to make sure it's fully well clean. We don't want to drag any other color on top of the one we were working. So now we're going into a darker beige, and we're just going to hit certain spots where the other did not cover as well. Again, this is only a base tone. This is what we're going to end up using to wash over with the other colors to then stain it and give it those flesh tones. Now, nobody has a single flesh tone on their body. There's always different multiple tones, and that's what we're going to achieve on Bane. But because there's so much detail within the actual skin, we're going to end up with a lot of interesting, intricate washes that take and the staining that occurs with the different colors. And each individual project or figure is really all its own. I doubt there's one or two that are the same. So here's our second coat that we're going with in a dark beige. Do not cover the entire first coat entirely. You only want to go into the areas where the other did not dry down and cover, and you just want to hit the spots where you want to cause a change in color when you stain it with the other washes. So particularly in this case, obviously the chest. This is what's going to be visible. Now, the reason why I pulled down the shirt is because it's easier to work around it. If you don't want to pull it down, that's fine. You're just going to have to mask it. Unfortunately, you'll have to pull the shirt in certain areas to get underneath it, and it's just really that much more difficult. It's best just to pull it and to replace the glue on those sleeves when you on the straps when you're ready to reattach it. For now, we're going to focus on covering the skin all in one tone. Again, we're almost done here with the darker beige. We're going to let it dry because it does dry darker. And this is the point where you want to make sure that you actually turn the elbows or bend the elbows and get into those different crevices. And like I said, if you want to remove the arms, then go ahead and do so. Later on in the video, you'll see that I did have to remove it. So get into the crevices as best you can. I'm using a smaller brush now, so I can get into those tight areas underneath where the tape is covering. And I don't want to miss any other gaps. I want as much of this paint to be stained as possible. So this is not going to be the initial color of the skin. Now, if you wanted to, and you wanted to stop here, well, that's fine. And the 2 steps is great, and you can spray it down, clear coat, maybe a semi-clear coat to give it a shiny skin tone color, and boom, you're set to go. This would actually be probably close to what the comic book skin tone is, a light skin tone with a gray in it, and you can just add the veins and have it pop out. But I'm not going for that on this. We're going for a more true skin color. Now, I already have a different Bane that I've worked on earlier, and I like the skin tones there. However, this one's going to be a little bit more red, more brown. It's going to be a bit more suntan, you can say. And it's just going to have more detail as far as the different details on the chest itself. You'll see how the paint takes. It's totally different, and I do have a before and after in some of the other videos if you hadn't seen them already. If not, you can go back and review those. As you can see, I did pull off the arm because it does have some areas where I cannot get to. Now, the 2 sockets for the arm, I'll do those last, simply because I want to have something to grab onto and turn the figure when I need to, and I won't be able to do that if they're wet, or I just have to wait till they're truly dry. But in the meantime, let's go back to this. Once they're dry, I'll pop them back in, go back in and hit it with a few more spots. Now, this we do want to put in a little bit thicker in some of those crevices. Again, turning the arm or the elbow to get into the areas where we may have missed, and on this figure there's quite a few. So take your time with it. It's not going to be a race. So So I ended up using two different cameras to do this, so you'll see the color shift from one camera to the other. This is now our third coat, and we are just using a wash. This is the tester's paint. It's just a yellow wash. It is not covering or changing the color as far as covering it up. We are only staining it. I'm using a sponge in a stippling technique only to wipe off the excess yellow. And on this camera, it shows that much stronger. On the iPhone, actually, it's a bit more pale. But again, a wash is a thin layer of paint that is very much transparent, and it does not cover the base paint. It only stains it. As you can see here, we can still see the flesh tone underneath, or the beige that we put in, but we now have a tinted yellow over the top. So this is not the end of it. Unfortunately, because there's so many crevices in here, it's just going to take you as long to do this as it did to paint it in the first place. Always make sure that between coats you have it fully dry. If you want to spray it down, that's fine, but I wouldn't at this point because you want that paint to stain. If you use the Mr. Super Clear, it's not going to stain as easy. So using a stippling technique on the sponge, you can do so. However, you can see that it doesn't take as well. So we're going to do the best thing, and we're going to be using a brush loaded up with the red brown, and again applying it to the surface that much easier. But as you can see, if you wanted to use just the sponge, you can do so, but it just doesn't get into those crevices. Just take a look at how well the brush does the job. So much better than the sponge. And then you can take the sponge and then just wipe away the excess, because the deep recessed areas already have what they need. You just want to wipe away this excess surface paint. That way, when we apply our third layer, we'll be able to stain that part as well. So we can still see some of the yellow, and we are now seeing that the red is now toned down to more of an orange, and that's fine. Now this is going to be to your liking, because once it's dry, if you wanted to go for an even stronger red, then this is the time to do it, because it can actually stain that much darker. Now if you wanted it to be less, then dilute your wash even more. Almost a light orange. And then again, you can control how dark you want to go by how many washes you want to add. So by now you're thinking, well, this is going to take a while, and that is true. It will take a while. It's a big figure. There's a lot of detail in here, and if you want it to look really, really good, then you're going to have to take your time and do so. So roughly, you're looking maybe at about 15 to 20 minutes per application of color. If you want to do it quickly, that's fine. Just remember that if you work quickly, you are very likely to miss a lot of spots. You're gonna have to come back and remix your colors, and if you don't remember how you mix those colors, then you're gonna have a whole different tone, and it's just gonna be a patchwork of a project, and you're not gonna be happy. So the best thing to do is take your time with each segment of the figure. Take off the arms, bend those elbows, get into those sockets, and make sure that before you apply your next coat or your next wash, that it is fully dry. That way the paint underneath can stain and take the time to soak up that stain. So let's continue on. So we've made it to the 5th coat, and this is blue. Blue is totally going to change the color here. It's going to make some areas go to a darker brown. It's going to change to an actual skin tone. And this is what we want to achieve, a more realistic look and having it be that 3-dimensional look. So again, your blue coat is going to be a wash. It's going to be transparent. You're going to work it into the crevices using the brush. Use as much water as you think is needed. If you want to go thin, use more water. If you want more blue tones, then use less water. If you want a different blue, that's fine. But this blue here is working just fine for me. Again, it's going to be on your taste. If you want darker tones, yeah, you can have stronger blue. Right now, all I want to do is achieve a different tones on the skin. As you can see, that orange is toning down to a more natural looking skin. It's gonna look pretty cool. So, same process. Take your time. Take off the arms just as you see that I did here. And then work it into all of those crevices. Use the sponge once again to wipe away the excess. Don't wipe it away from the crevices, only on the areas where it's going to be visible or the actual surface. And remember, you don't want to wipe away the entire blue because you're going to take away the staining. So let it stain enough so that you can get those skin tones. As you can see here, those oranges are already changing color to a more natural look. So now you can see the whole purpose of masking off those areas on the arms. Now if you wanted to, you could paint right over them and then just repaint all of those details. But it's just more work and more time involved. So save yourself some time, cut down some strips of blue tape or masking tape, whatever you're using, and cover them up. And then you can just come back and do any cleanup details instead of repainting the entire detail that's there. So save yourself some time and work smart. Don't create extra work for yourself. In the end, the result is going to be that much better for you. So now we are down to coat number 6. And yes, I know there's a few steps, but it's really important to have these. And is that at this point, you can add those little freckles by using the brush and just moving the bristles back and letting it spatter all over the chest, and that depends on what you want it to look like. With so much detail on here, you're really not going to be able to see it. It'd have to be more of an even surface or smooth surface for you to see it. So I did do it. I didn't like it. I didn't see the result. So the best thing to do here is to go down and change these skin tones even more. So I took the brown, and this time I used the sponge to apply it. I don't want to get in the crevices. I only want to stay on the surface and change those reds and oranges to an actual brown skin tone, showing that there's actually color coming through as if you had a sunburn or something. So again, this camera shows it different. The other camera has less saturation. So once again, going all over the piece, I attach the arms because I want to see how it's looking as I am working on area, so I can then match the other area. And if they're separated, it's a little bit more difficult. Now, as you can see, I did not paint the slots where the arms move. I don't want any paint in there because I don't want it to be difficult when I pose the figure. If you put paint in there, it's going to happen just like those NECA toys. It's going to stick. It's going to be a real pain to do any kind of posing, and you're going to have to heat it up. So it's best to leave those clean. Leave them gray. As it is, it's going to be on a shelf and you're not going to see it unless you're going to put your face in there. So do not paint the joints. Only paint the surface that is going to be visible. As you can see, the brown is already changing the tone of those oranges. And I didn't apply it every single spot, only in the areas that is visible to me where I believe it's needed. Then I went back in and added a lighter beige over the top of that to add some highlights, and then you'll see that toward the end. Once again, take your time. It's going to take you another 15 or 20 minutes to do just this. So we've made it to our 7th coat of paint, and this is where I'm applying the light beige once again to give it some highlights on the skin tone. Once again, not everybody has a single tone on their body which is the same. It's a varied multiple tones over our skin, and this is what we want to achieve on this figure. The more detail we have, the more realism we get out of it, and it's just fun to paint. If you just want to stick with 1 or 2 layers or 3 layers, and that's fine. It's going to be your figure. You're the one who's going to be looking at it. Now, if you do it to one, you've got to do it to the rest of the limbs. So not just the torso, but you got to apply it to the arms. And at this point, you want to start thinking about where does the light hit? How would it look if there was light coming from above or at a directional angle? That's where you want to hit the spots to highlight those skin textures. So we've made it to applying the green veins, and you can say this is step number 8. However, it's its own little project. These veins themselves require their own amount of time. So I've already thinned out my yellow green. I don't want a stark green because I want these to look like they're coming from underneath the skin and protruding. So I took a fine point brush. I diluted it with the water so that my mix of yellow and green can go on smooth. If you just go on direct with the paint out of the bottle, it can go on smooth, but only for a small portion, because then it's gonna dry out with all of the texture that's on here. And if you have enough water on there, then it's gonna go on smoother and you'll be able to get a straight line. Now, I've taken a chisel brush and I've diluted the paint even more, and then I've applied a very thin wash over the area where the veins are. That way it looks like he is truly having his flesh or his skin contaminated by the venom that comes from the container. So it doesn't look like there's just veins coming from the skin. It's got to come through it. So we want to extend that color, not to glow, but to show that he is truly being filled with venom. Then we'll come back in. We're going to take a light beige. We're going to use the sponge. Here we go. And we're going to apply it on top of the green that we have already applied, because we want it to look like it's, or simulate that it's truly underneath the skin. So this is going to be one of those techniques that you're going to use according to your liking. You may not like to have the veins coming through that way. You might want to have them more pronounced, and that's fine. You can go back in and paint right over that. But whatever you do to one arm, you'll have to do to the other. And then again, you'll have to do the same on the chest. Those are going to be the three different areas that are going to be pronounced in the actual portrait of your figure. Remember that the t-shirt is going to cover a good part of the chest. So only work in the area that is actually going to be showing of above the t-shirt, the neckline. Now once you've finished both of the arms and the chest, then you can go back in with your fine tip brush and some diluted yellow green and go back over some of the details that you may have erased while using the light beige to give it that simulated under the skin look. So only to areas that you want to pronounce. Don't do it to the entire section. Only areas so that it has that realistic look, because not everything would actually look the same. You might have one portion of it darker, one portion of it lighter, and the same thing for the chest. I've already done that here, and now I am just coming back in and I am going to give it a light coat of beige over the veins here for the same purpose. We want it to look like it's coming through the skin. Using the sponge and using a light beige, just going over the top. And keep in mind that the paint that you're applying will dry down darker. So here it looks actually white. It's not going to look that way. It's actually going to dry and it's going to match right in or blend in with the rest of the skin tones. So we've made it to the final coat. This is it. We're going to add just a thin layer of red wash to get into those crevices and really have them be pronounced. This is going to be according to how you want to see the figure. You may not want it. You may want even darker, and that's fine. It's going to be according to your taste. For me, I just want to have a bigger contrast between the crevices and the surface tone on the skin. So right now I'm working on this chicken leg here, and then we're going to attach it, and we're going to see what it looks like when we put it all together. Now don't forget to then work on the hands. The hands are going to require the same process. They're pretty much a project all their own. Should I make a whole video on that? I don't think it's necessary. It's just going to be a repeat of this same thing. So take the hands off and go through the different steps that we've already specified at the beginning of this video using the same paint, and you'll end up with the same tones in the skin. Then you remove the tape that you've got, and you can go back in and do any light touch-ups along the edges using the same mix of paints that you already have on the list. Then you can go back in and do the dry brushing on the details on the bands, and you'll be ready to go. If you want to go more leather, then you've got the steps to reproduce that leather look that we did on the belt, and you'll be set to go once you hit it with some clear coat, either Mr. Super Clear or the Model Masters. I'm going to leave you now with a video of the before and after segments on this figure. If you liked the video, give it a like, share it, comment, and of course, subscribe. There's a lot more videos like this on the way. In the meantime, don't forget to keep customizing.